Hello and welcome to Voices of Parenting podcast. I am so glad you're here. My name is Mussi. I am an advanced nurtured heart approach trainer. I am a parenting coach. I am also an inner wealth coach, which means that I help people rediscover and connect to the people that they truly were all along, but may have gotten forgotten along the way. So to find out more about me and what I offer, you can check out mussydiskin.com. I would love to connect and I would love to hear your feedback. Reach out to energizinghearts@gmail.com. Thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We are with Scott Lindstrom. Scott was one of my very first guests on this podcast, even before it was a podcast, actually, because you and Freddie got on a recording with me. We were just having a conversation, and we were like, how cool would this be if we recorded it and we just put it on YouTube and people could watch it? And that was the inspiration for this podcast. So there you go.
Who knew?
Welcome back. Who knew?
It's not surprising, cool. I got to say, Mussi.
Yeah. It's been really fun.
You were on fire. And even back then, it was like, oh, nobody's going to stop Mussi from doing this stuff. And so it's been really, really fun to watch where that's gone since then.
Thank you. And it's really fun to have a place for it to go.
Yeah.
That I don't have to wait for an audience. I can just do it and then the audience can take it or leave it. You know, it's the best. And I get to talk to such cool people about things that I love talking about. I could never get tired of talking about this stuff, I think. So I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. So Scott, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
We chatted about this a little bit before. You have been at this a long time. You were at my very first CTI. Definitely a huge inspiration to me. Even just those few stories you shared about yourself. At that time, you had recently gone through the fires in Northern California, and you had shared with us how Nurtured Heart had been a part of that journey, but that was so real, and that really, at that CTI, like opened something for me very deeply. And I've always felt like you were one of my parents in Nurtured Heart somehow, like really, really guided me here. And we've had some conversations and like some really intense moments where I remember I was locked in the bathroom once and I called you and you picked up and I was like, Scott, my daughter's outside and she won't go to school. Help me. I can't. She's yelling and screaming and throwing things. So yeah, you've been a big part of my Nurtured Heart, but you're still here and you're still teaching it. And you mentioned yesterday you were even retired and then you came back and continued teaching Nurtured Heart and continue doing the work you do. And so the question really is, for me, is why? Why are you still doing it? Why do you do this? Why are you still doing this? Why do you do it? What are you hoping for in continuing to bring these messages to whoever you're bringing it to? What do you hope for? What's your why?
Yeah, and what is the it that we're still doing? I mean, it's in part, it is Nurtured Heart approach. But yeah, the it is also, it's all of it. It's the approach. Nurtured Heart really impacts a lot of what I do, whether it's in my work or in my personal life, wherever I am in my inner life. But yeah, the it is kind of, it's the ether out there, right? Why am I doing it? It's an interesting question that you asked. And actually, I love the question because it got me thinking. And you also asked, what do you hope for? And that was interesting. And so I've been contemplating that a little bit, but basically why I'm doing the things that I'm doing and why Nurtured Heart is in the mix of all of that. It's just, bottom line is it works for me. But then the question is, well, how does it work for you? And I guess one of the things that came to me is, and you know, I'm getting to a point in life where I'm kind of up there in years, and there's a neat thing that's been happening in the more recent years is, and I don't know, I think it's fairly common, but I'm not positive with the aging process that we get to a point of, and I can own this now in a different way, that a point of there's wisdom that we get to carry. And part of that wisdom is recognizing that you bring something. And part of that wisdom is recognizing that you don't bring everything ever. And that everywhere you go, the world is better. And well, for me and most of my life, the world is better because of the others that I'm in that moment with. And I don't feel the need to have the answers that I felt maybe when I was in my 40s and 50s. I feel like I have the answers I have, but the answers are so much broader now, because whether it's my 6-year-old granddaughter or my 8-year-old grandson or you or people I met with in our team yesterday. There's just so much more. And the approach is something that has helped me to see that with much more clarity and much more purposefully. So what the approach helps me to do, and this is just a little thing is to live purposefully moment by moment in loving, respectful relationships. And that those loving, respectful relationships, that's a word you probably remember from me too, is that's a word that for me, relationships, it all happens in relationship, whether it's my inner relationships with myself, whether it's my relationships with nature, my marriage, my family, my community, my world. Even I think since we talk so much about energy, I think of my relationship in and with the universe. It's just Nurtured Heart has given me what I think it gives us is a framework, some common language, some ways that we can set up inner workings that allow us to be more purposeful in how we live life and to impact the relationships with all of the people we get to be in relationship with. And sometimes I've gone from a place of thinking every person I run into, is going to have that. But sometimes I look around and I'm not so sure. But I am pretty sure that I can make choices about where I choose to spend my time and energy. So, and it's not going to be on the negative, looking hard at the negative and absorbing the negative and the problematic issues, except to the degree that that might serve me in the long run. So the approach has helped a lot. The three stands, absolutely no, absolutely clear. I'm sorry, absolutely yes. I skipped the sequence. And that's an interesting one too, because when we get early in this process, a lot of us go, yeah, I want to live in stand two all the time. And the reality, and I'm pretty sure this is where you are too, is there's a way that stand three, particularly when we're doing the inner work, is all encompassing. And sometimes it's called your stand one or your stand four. But yeah, there's a way that this is really about the who I am and how I'm going to live. And that framework of the three stands is just a marvelous tool for making that happen. Now, I think there's things we can find, like I've found some similar territory in mindfulness work, various kinds of work that I've done out there, but this framework really works for me. Why do I do this? I don't know, because it keeps working. And I
So when you
find
say
that when I'm
working, what do you mean
attuned,
by that?
pardon me?
When we say working, what do you mean by that? That you're able to have those
Yeah, I'll say
purposeful.
that when I'm attuned to, and my wife is funny because she and I have both been trained, but she notices anytime I'm about to do a training, she goes, "Oh, you're getting ready to do a training, aren't you?" Because I start to get more cognizant of how I'm being in relationship with her. Um, and it's cool because that's part of why I keep doing training is because for one thing, it keeps me in practice, keeps me in the practice, it keeps me working it. And I find that when I'm doing training and when I'm working with people in this realm, people like you, people like Josh and Damien who I co-train with, that it helps me to stay present with it. There's a way that there's this kind of sequence they talk about in terms of levels of competence. And there's a top level they consider to be unconscious competence where things get automatic. But I think there's a danger with thinking you're in unconscious competence because we're all going to slip back, right? Regression toward the mean or when we stress, we regress, whatever it might be. So when I'm doing training, when I'm working with people in this, and I'm having conversations like this, it helps me to get more just in tune with it, attuned to it. Helps me be in it more fully again. And it's my reminder to get back out of the old automatic stuff because I know you've done a lot of training in this realm. That neuroscience tells us that we're going to regress, right? We're going to go back to old patterns. Just it's human nature. And the cool thing about this is to come out of that regression. I can just go three stands. That's all. I mean, it's such a quick prompt to just go, oh, dude, three stands.
Can
So,
you do it out loud for people who maybe haven't heard it yet?
pardon me?
Like, what is? Can you do that out loud? That process really quick out loud for people who haven't maybe heard it yet in this way?
Yeah, the three stands. Absolutely no. I'm not going to dwell in negativity. I'm not going to connect with my own negative thoughts and dwell in them, except to the point that they're useful. That doing that is useful. That's been one of the things that's been helpful for me to realize is that um, negative, the negative thoughts, negative interactions can be there to service as well. Absolutely, yes. I'm going to be all in on looking for what's going right. What's the miracle that's standing in front of me right now? Whether it's when I go to my window in the morning to look out and see the sunshine on the trees, or whether it's when I walk into a room for a training, or if I'm in a conversation with you or somebody else, I'm all in on trying to see what's going right. And absolutely clear on that distinction, what that means, and that's how I'm going to show up. Clear on who I am, how I'm going to show up. Clear that on how I'm going to engage in other activities. So some examples. Um, I think anger is one for me that's worked a lot. Is when anger shows up neurologically. We all kind of know that pattern of anger shows up. Amygdala takes over. We downshift. We go into old patterns. We go into childhood patterns. We go into a more reactive fight, flight, freeze. There's a fourth F that different people call differently, but when we go those places, what I've come to learn is that I can, if I'm conscious of that, even if it's too late and I'm already kind of deep into those feelings, I can be conscious of it and I can go, oh, you're going to need to reset to, and what that does when I am aware of that, it's almost like it kind of goes below the amygdala and comes back up into my cognitive brain, my cortex, and allows me to start processing that anger. Sometimes when I'm in it, it's really hard to come out of it. But what I've learned to do is to not beat myself up afterwards, even though I've made mistakes often when I'm in my anger. I may say something. My wife and I often, if we both get to attention, if I'm able to catch it before I go there, it doesn't escalate. If I don't, it's going to escalate. Um, when it does, then I'm going to probably have an apology coming down the line that I owe. But also, I'm going to have the opportunity to go, oh, do you see? There's that anger. You got another lesson there. What do you got for me, anger? What do you got this time? And it's that. Remember when you notice before you respond that your relationship shifts accordingly, and so that anger now is kind of my reminder to reset. But also there's a place underneath that, and I've talked about this. There's that kind of surface level, oh, you need to reset, and look what happens when you do. But there's also, why does it matter that you felt like you needed to reset? Why does that even matter? I mean, why does it matter that you said something maybe that wasn't that nice? And where that takes us to is that deeper place of, who are you? Who do you own? And who you want to own, who I want to own, is somebody for whom love and respect is the overriding being, the overriding who I am. And when I kind of reset, and particularly when I process difficult moments after the fact, then it allows me to get into that, okay, who are you that offended yourself, that you offended yourself when you did that? And what does that say about the wonder, the miracle of who you are and the being that you are that gets to be uniquely expressed on our planet at this time? And when I see that, then I can grow that purposely. And again, the purposely part of this is, to me, is part of what Nurtured Heart gives me, is then I can see that. And then, I can practice my stand to recognitions on myself and look at the greatness of you. You could have just ignored this. You could just blame that person for your anger, like I've done so many times in life, like I often did as a parent, honestly. My kids, I would get angry at my kids and I'd be madder at my kids because look at me being mad. I'm not being nice. I'm not being the dad I want to be. And that makes me even more angry at my kids because look what they made me do. Right. And this gets to break that cycle. And the result of breaking that cycle is it takes us into that deeper place of knowing who we are, building who we are, becoming kind of the ever-growing miracle of who we are. I think that's a beauty of life, is that it's always unfolding. After you and I are done today, we're both going to be different people than we were before, right? It might be minute, the differences, but they're there. And how cool is that we get to do that? And with this approach, I find that the three stands and kind of that awareness of energy and that just the intentional choice of how we're going to view life, it just changes things for us. So that's kind of why, because I find that it really serves my being in the world the way that feels so good to me. It serves my relationships with people. It serves my professional work. That we had a team yesterday, And this is an interesting thing, mostly because, we talk a lot about the greatness qualities, the loving words, the virtues, those kinds of things that we use to describe when we're adding, here's the evidence, and here's what that tells me about who you are. I've often felt like wonder is one of the words that I really gravitate to, both in my feeling of who I am. I love that I'm a guy who sees wonder in the world, whether it's in a person or in the tree or the bugs um, or how a relationship is forming up or the work or whatever it is. I love that. And my wife and my mother-in-law both describe that about me a lot. Yesterday I was in a meeting where we were drawing these cards that had words like that on it. And one of the other people drew the word wonder. When she started talking about wonder, it was, I wonder what's going to go wrong with those traumatized kids today between the behavior and just what happens to them in life. And it was like, I've always assumed this use of the word wonder. And she had a completely different meaning for that word and how it was impacting her in that moment. And the way I looked at that was in reference to nurtured heart approach and how we train and how sometimes we assume these are all wonderful virtues. And sometimes people talk about that toxic positivity and stuff. And I feel like for the most part, we don't hang out in toxic positivity because we're bringing evidence and we're being present. But in my team meetings, I've found that both I have to be cautious and not assume that everybody sees a virtuous word the way that I do, but also bring that because I also find that in every one of our meetings, there is a flavor and it's without necessarily, I've invited all of them to an introductory training at least, but they don't have to be trained to start to be infected by it. And we don't have to go through training for people to start feeling that sense of wonder about them. There's that word again. That sense of, I don't know, the wonder, the amazement, the miracle of who they are, and the safety of being able to call that out in each other. And I have found that just starts to automatically happen in our meetings now. It's just really consistent, and it's not just in the words that are said, but it's in the way people look at each other, the way people walk into the room and feel a presence of kind of love and safety and vulnerability and appreciation. So in my work, it's that way. I don't know. I guess I'll go with one more story. A way that it's impacted me. No, I'll go with 1.5.
And I don't want to say this because it's way too good. We're at 21 minutes, but we're going
Get
to
the
keep
heck
going.
out of here.
I know, right? It's so hard to be
How
mean,
does this
but
happen?
I'm so brave that I do it anyways. We're going to keep going for your 1.5 stories, Scott.
Trim however you want to trim, because I know I tend to ramble too. And
Oh, this is delicious. I'm
so
so
I have a
tired.
daughter who is an addict, and she would reference herself that way. I don't like to say somebody is an addict. I like to think of that as they have issues with addiction. But she works a 12-step program, which I think is a beautiful fit with NHA. And in that, part of their thing is I am an addict. And that's part of their process of turning it over to a higher power as well. But have been times, particularly in her darkest time a few years ago before she went into a longer term recovery, where this approach saved me. And it may have been in part what saved her life. I think what saved her life was also that she'd had a long term positive relationship with her family and both of her parents, even though her parents had gone through divorce and now had significant others. She had positive relationships with them as well. But specifically for me, there were times that it was so dark that when you're in that place as a parent, you just get lost in that. And I was hours on end at night just thinking about all that could be happening and all the blame of myself and all the what could I do? What conversation could I have? How could I make a difference here? And literally started practicing reset. I was fortunate that I was deep into nurtured heart at that time and started practicing reset and saying reset and literally had to then recognize myself for resetting, which is the conclusion of reset, right? So welcome back or welcome forward. Welcome to your next state of regulation here. So I did a lot of practice of that, including the part where I went into recognizing myself for resetting, because that's also part of shifting your brain. And then I was able to also stay really consistent with any contact I had with her, was saying, look at you right now. Hey, are you smoking heroin right now? You're not. How cool is that? You got a minute. Hey, we've just been talking 5 minutes. You got 5 minutes. How cool is that? Hey, you texted me last night. You were really angry and you let me know. But you also knew that even contacting me angry would feel better to me than not hearing from you at all. That you let me know you're safe. How cool is that? How amazing is that? You had the courage to do that. And you're expressing anger. Sometimes you were so scared to express anger. All this kind of stuff could come from me. And it was like, I was so clear that I was not going to dig into any negativity with her. She had plenty of that going on in herself, and addicts do, with the shame that she was carrying around. She did not need me to point that out to her or add to it. But what really worked was being relentless about not contributing to her shame, not focusing on the negative aspects of addiction she was going through, but focusing on the positive. Now we can talk about the fact that her addiction brings her some wisdom that her sisters don't have because they haven't had addiction issues. They have their own wisdoms. But for her, she's got some understanding and empathy that she wouldn't have had if she hadn't been through this. She relapsed last year and is back in 5 months now. But again, there was a period where it was really hard, and boy, I had to reset the heck out of myself because she was not communicating for a while. But I kept kind of leaving it to her journey. It's her journey. My journey is to regulate myself here and to contribute to her growth in the ways that I can when she's ready. But so now she's back to this place, and she's actually started a podcast. And in that podcast, I don't know if she's doing this intentionally or not, but I do hear nurtured heart, because she and I talk about nurtured heart approach and what it means. But I do hear the language and the owning of that sense of self that comes from that place. She will talk about negative self-talk, and then she'll kind of laugh and go, and then I close it with, you beautiful creature. And it's like, oh, you got this, don't you? Even if you don't practice it all the time, that's the fact you're aware, and you go, and in a sense, Mussi, that's a reset for her, right? In a sense, even though she didn't say reset, she caught herself in negative voice and reset and said, you beautiful creature. So that's been a beautiful part of our relationship. And at some point, I think we will get her trained as a trainer. She's back into doing treatment work now for other people, with other people. And the other just half positive story is, the reason I do this is, at the end of every one of our trainings, when we do a tray, we might have 60 people in the room, and we stand in a circle, and part of it is recognizing each other and the community we have that day. And I really believe, and this is all, a lot of our work is energetic and relationship based, right? I really believe in the ripple effect. And I feel like I get to have ripples. And when we do this, again, purposefully, we can bring all of those 60 people together and say, let's breathe into the ripple we're having on the universe right now, and be intentional about that, and get ready to take that ripple out into the world after we leave this room. And I believe that this approach for me has been the way I got to that place. So stop there.
I didn't even know how much I needed this, Scott. I need to talk to you more often.
Hmm.
Well, I'm going to let our audience go, but I want to ask you, Scott, if they wanted to connect with you, is there some way they can reach out to you if they wanted to hear more from you or connect with you in any way? And then what would that be?
Right now, I'm still working in my schools, and I don't have a whole lot of time except through our trainings. But yeah, I mean, how could I do that? I guess I'm not afraid to give out Scott C. Lindstrom at Gmail.
Okay.
That's my name, and that's my
Scott
Gmail
C.
account
Lindstrom
if
at
people want to
gmail.com.
shoot. Yeah. I own a URL. It's all relationships, but I don't have a website yet or anything. So we'll see. If I'm done with working in schools, then I'll probably get back into doing a little more
Okay.
outreach and doing that kind of stuff again.
So if you want more Scott C. Lindstrom at gmail.com. And there's also 2 other episodes in the beginning of this podcast. Scroll back and watch them if you haven't
Nice.
seen them yet. Hey, wait, don't go yet. Take a minute to find the beautiful quality that you have, that you appreciate about yourself.